Print, email, Facebook, Twitter. More Aboriginal leaders celebrate 40 years since they stared down the miners in Noonkanbah dispute. Indigenous leaders will this week mark 40 years since Aboriginal protesters faced off against a convoy of police and miners to protect their sacred land. The Noonkanbah dispute in Western Australia's remote north put land rights on the national agenda and led to the foundation of the Kimberley Land Council in 1980. After a 2-year standoff, the Noonkanbah people and their supporters sat in a dusty Kimberley Creek bed, blocking the path of the drilling rigs. Warning: Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are advised. The images in this article contain people who are deceased. Fight gets physical by late August. Police officers, backed by a frustrated state government, began dragging people away. Witnesses said the objectors started to sing while they were carted off to jail. Workers from mining company Amax then punctured sacred ground on the Fitzroy Crossing cattle station searching for a lucrative oil reserve. By November they realized it did not exist. In the middle of the scuffle, 30-year-old freelance photographer Michael Gallagher captured one of the defining confrontations in Australia's land rights history. It has been 4 decades since the Noonkanbah dispute began, but Mr. Gallagher's memory remains as sharp as the 2,000-odd photographs he took during his time on the picket line. "It was very intense," the now 69-year-old said. "You got a sense of how extraordinary this was and how bloody-minded the government turned out to be, and, by the time that convoy rolled through, it was just a stunning thing to do under those circumstances." Protesters win public sympathy. Although the mining company was able to break through the blockade, their heavy-handedness stoked a groundswell of support for the Noonkanbah people and helped put Aboriginal land rights on the national agenda. It also led to an inaugural address from the first delegation of Indigenous Australians to the United Nations. It was the first dramatic expression of Aboriginal people standing very solidly to defend their rights, Mr. Gallagher said. Land Council founded Western Australia's far north was a hotbed of mining activity in the 1970s, and Aboriginal people could see a confrontation brewing over access to their traditional lands. 2 years before the climactic showdown at Noonkanbah Station, representatives from more than 30 Aboriginal communities held an unprecedented meeting to figure out how they would confront the miners. They founded the Kimberley Land Council to represent their collective interests. In a newsletter in 1978, the Kimberley Land Council wrote, "The representatives talked about their experiences and about the benefits they would get from joining together and making their voices one voice. And they decided, yes, they would set up a land council. And so the CLC arrived." Kimberley Land Council Chairman Anthony Watson, whose father John Watson was on the picket line, said the dispute mobilized Kimberley people in a way that was completely new. "It was a turning point in getting everyone to band together and to hold the government accountable," Mr. Watson said. "It got the whole Kimberley going, and established that they, Aboriginal people, needed to have rights to protect their heritage sites and their culture." Leaders reflect at Native Title Conference. It's a milestone that hundreds of Indigenous leaders will look back on as they arrive in the Kimberley this week for a national Native Title Conference. Negotiations around land use have changed significantly since the 1970s, but Mr. Watson believed true progress still eluded his people. 40 years on, "We need to move forward and find a better way to work with each other," he said. "We're still saying the same thing." Now a veteran anthropologist, Mr. Gallagher is this week holding an exhibition of his photographs to coincide with the conference in Broome.